Also ahead, from George Washington to George Bush, they were the animals behind the men, America's White House pets. For our first story, place yourself in London in June of 1940. Imagine waking every night to the whistle of bombs. You scramble to the basement or to the shelter. You hear the wail of fire engines. The war is closing in. Hitler has already stretched himself across the breadth of Europe, and now only Great Britain remains free, the continent's last democracy. While you look to the skies in fear, you also see a glimmer of hope. Hitler's bombers are not alone. British Spitfires are on their tail.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
British Prime Minister Winston Churchill's words rally a nation on the verge of defeat. It is June 1940. Nearly all of Europe has fallen into Nazi hands, and Hitler sets his sights on the last stronghold of democracy, Great Britain. The only obstacle to German victory is a group of very young men, the pilots of the Royal Air Force.
It was pretty obvious that it was going to be a long slog. The Luftwaffe, it was a very mighty instrument, and they had expected that they'd knock us out of the sky quite rapidly.
Outnumbered by the Germans nearly 2-to-1 in both pilots and planes, the British do have one distinct advantage, a crude new system called radar.
We knew when they were coming and roughly what size the formation was. And I think if we hadn't had that information, well, there's no two ways about it. We'd have needed about 4 times as many aircraft to do the same job.
In mid-August, Hitler unleashes Operation Eagle, a relentless aerial attack on Britain's airfields and docks.
The raids were so frequent, and that one was simply up and down, up and down.
The bell would ring, and that was the time that the adrenaline was really running, when that bloody telephone rang.
The first flight every morning, you got that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach when you took off. Oh my God, what are we up to now?
The moment anybody in our formation saw it, wherever he was, he would simply say, "Tally-ho, bandits."
The thing to do was to track the bombers, stop them dropping their bombs.
The Spitfires, which I was flying, were up top to take on the fighters, and the Hurricanes were down below to take on the bomber formation.
When you would take them head on, they used to grow quite rapidly until they filled your entire windscreen, and then you knew it was time to start shooting at somebody.
The ideal distance was between 150 and 200 yards, because you had 8 machine guns, which were slightly angled in to coincide all 8 at 200 yards.
The tendency was, in your excitement, to start spraying bullets around a bit too early. And you couldn't afford to do that, because we've got this 13 seconds to play with. And when you're out of ammunition, you are no good to anybody.
Well, you were frightened all the time. Nobody said he wasn't frightened. It's a bloody liar.
Some 20,000 feet below, the British people witness the fight for their homeland.
One of my most vivid memories is lying on my back in the back garden and watching the dogfights of the Spitfires.
Film director John Borman is 10 years old that summer.
There's little insects, weaving around each other, and you could hardly hear anything. And then suddenly you'd see a trail of black smoke, and one of them would come plunging down.
I suppose one's elated to see it go down, and it ain't you. But not a lot of fun, really. It's not a very nice sight seeing a big aeroplane going down with chaps trapped inside, no matter who they are.
On one occasion, we had the thrill of actually seeing a German pilot, who'd parachuted down, and there he was, and we were always astonished to see he only had one head, because or that he wasn't some kind of monster.
When I was shot down myself, I just managed to get out in time and just managed to open my parachute. So I was a bit singed and burnt and grilled up a bit. But you've got to accept the fact that when you're going to this fight, you're probably going to get killed. There's no point getting a twitch about it. The principal thing actually is that you've got a number of people with you who are depending on you.
It was rare for a fighter squadron to go out as 12. They went out as 12 as often as not, but they never came back as 12, very rarely indeed. The main feeling was numbers were diminishing and the pressure was just piling up.
The British will not bend. Impatient and frustrated, Hitler unexpectedly switches his target.
They went for bombing London, and of course that was a fatal mistake. because it left the airfields intact and the radar system intact. We flew over the top of London about 8,000 feet. Everything you could see was ablaze, smoke and everything. God, it was a sight.
Mother would drag us out of our bed and take us down to the air raid shelter in the wet and the rain, and you would wait for these bombs to fall. They'd get closer and closer, and you'd know that the next one was either going to hit you or go over you.
On September 15th, in what will be the most decisive day in the Battle of Britain, Hitler wages an all-out assault to crush the English spirit. Wave after wave of German raiders are defeated, and for the first time, the Luftwaffe feels overwhelmed.
The 15th of September was the date when the Germans acknowledged that they weren't going to be able to invade. They realized they couldn't carry on accepting the losses when they weren't achieving results.
They were the great heroes. They were all so young. They were boys, really.
Hero is somebody who does it beyond the call of duty. Well, did we do that? We kept on flying, that was it. We didn't say, we'll surrender.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Alec Ingle was a flying officer in the Hurricane Squadron. He retired from the Royal Air Force as a group captain in 1966. Patrick Hancock, a pilot officer in the Hurricane Squadron, is now a wing commander and the honorary secretary and treasurer of the Battle of Britain Fighter Association. Paddy Barthrop was a flying officer in the Spitfire Squadron. He recently retired as a wing commander. John Borman is now a film director who based the movie Hope and Glory on his own wartime experiences as a boy in London. Next, another moment, another time on Instant Recall.